Okay, setting up your meeting. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my colleagues that's here. We've got Helen from Namibia Horse Safaris Company. Is that correct, Helen? Sorry.
Yes.
Andrew Gillis from Namibia Horse Safari Company. We've got a special guest here, Christine Wolfswichers from OUS, directly involved with the wild horses. I've got my colleague, Joseph Kafunda, who's on the big screen. Thank you for joining. And then we've got some guests here from Cape Town. Hanrei Becker, we've got Jenny, and a few others. Welcome to everybody this morning. My name is Michelle Becker. I'm from Events Link Africa. We created a platform called NLink in order to contribute back to the tourism industry, keeping your products alive, introducing your products to the world, introducing Namibia to the world, and also in turn bringing people into Namibia. So a hot topic lately are the wild horses of Namibia. So I was going to say hot off the catwalk, but it's more like hot off the horse trail or something like that, isn't it? So the wild horses are doing a lot for us. They are in the news lately. And so we've got Helen, who is a marketing person for the Wild Horses Foundation, to talk to us and teach us a little bit more about the horses, and hopefully we can include this in our itineraries for those of you in Namibia, for our Cape Townian friends, if you do the Namibian add on to your packages, um, but put the wild horses in with your itinerary. So Helen, you've got a presentation that you want to share, and then if you want to introduce yourself, and then Christine, if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself as well. Welcome. Christine,
Sorry,
you
let
want
me
to
just.
tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm situated in Aus, which is very close to where the wild horses are located. The so-called Garib areas. It's 20 kilometers from us. So especially when it came to drought feeding, and so we were usually the people here on the grounds, hands on. I'm based at a lodge, Klanos Vista, which always had a very big, long-going connection with the horses and marketing them as well and looking after them. So yeah, especially now, it's interesting times, difficult times, but yeah, I mean, we carry on. We still do what we do, and it's interesting that with no tourists in the moment here, yeah, it's a total different appearance down there at Garib as well, and the horses are actually, I think in one or other funny way, they miss it a little bit, that interaction with the humans, because they got quite used to it. But for us, at the end of the day, it's an interesting thing now to see that they can just be horses again. They don't have to interact with people. But yeah, we can tell you more about that. Yeah, I'm the secretary of the Namibia Wild Horses Foundation, doing a lot of the paperwork and stuff, and yeah, otherwise being actively involved and looking after them.
Well, thank you very much. I really hope by doing all of this and the shows that we can bring you lots and lots of guests so the horses can interact pretty soon, as soon as those borders open. Helen, tell us a little bit who you are. I'm sure everybody in Namibia knows who you are, but for our friends in one of the and all the other countries, just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'll be putting my camera off if you're not careful. No, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the Namibia Wild Horses Foundation. I just want to mention to those who don't know that, as you can see on the screen now, it's a non-profit association incorporated under Section 21. It means it's a legal body, but all the directors who assist on the board are voluntary. So everything is done voluntarily. And one thing that Christina would not mention is that we have a very active feeding program that very few volunteers assist in. And she sometimes single-handedly, with just a few volunteers, unpacks a interlink of 800 bales of fodder for the
Wow.
horses, which is no mean feat. 800 bales of grass is quite something to unload. Then she drives it out to the horses, distributing it over a very wide area. It's a huge contribution, personal contribution towards the wild horses. So this is the sort of stuff that goes on that people know nothing about. I just wanted to get that little
Thank you very much for sharing
bit of
that. That is,
information in there.
yeah, wow, Christine, thank you so much. It's amazing work and well done.
And not only the physical work, but we have the unfortunate frustration of having to work with the authorities, and that Christina manages for us. And the less said about that, the better. I'm going to now move on with the presentation. So the history of the wild horses is very much connected to the this history of our country. Of course, we have many histories in this country, but this was during the Second World War, when Germany was still, First World War. So the mystery of the origins of the wild horses, there's a possibility that they were a fallout from the war, because the German encampment that was at where Kleinhaus Vista, the Lodge Kleinhaus Vista is now, was where the German encampment was. In fact, the trenches from the German troops are still to be seen there. 20 kilometers further down the escarpment was the Union troops, that's the South African British encampment. And there were some 6,000 horses there. And sometime during 1915, the Germans bombed the Union troops encampment at Gurrup, and horses and people scattered in every direction. And soon after that, the Germans were forced to leave, so their horses were also abandoned. So this is one of the ideas as to where, theories where the horses came from. Added to that, very close to this area is a farm called Kubub, which is owned by Emil Kreplin, who was the mayor of Ludwigsburg at the time. Led quite a high life. He also bred horses for the mines, and he was interred during the war, and his farm animals were abandoned at some stage. So there's a huge possibility that part of the wild horses also came from his stud. This just gives an indication as to where Aus is and Gurrup, which is where the waterhole is. They are mere 20 kilometers apart, so that's fairly close. There is a theory among some that some of the horses came from Duisep, but if you look how far away Duisep is to Gurrup, that's almost impossible for the horses to have traveled there. Also, they would have had to cross that part of the Dune Sea there, which it just seems impossibly far for the horses to have come from there.
Would there be any water between Duisep and that area? If that was a theory, So
possibly not, because there's a dune sea in between.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there's a lot of farms in between, and those farms were also there at that stage, but a lot of people only had wells, so yeah, it is rather unrealistic, let's call it that way.
Yeah.
So even after a century of freedom, scientifically we cannot call them wild, because they were domesticated. So they are referred to as feral. This pamphlet comes from a lecture tour that Manny Goldbeck and Talani Greyling did in 2015, and they went around the country just talking about the foundation and the horses. But we do say the Namibia Wild Horses Foundation, but technically from a scientific point of view, they are feral. We just have to remember that. Sometimes that gets quite controversial.
So Helen, what does it mean? So for me as a tourist, when we go and have a look at the wild horses, can you get near them or go close to them? Or Christine, what do you say? No.
No, they very often come to you.
Oh, okay, so If we take a little bit of sugar and carrots, they will come to us.
That's especially what we try to discourage all the time, but we'll get to that later. But
Okay.
they are very approachable, and since they have been really, they have gotten used to people, they
Yeah.
don't mind.
Okay. I'm not
So they
going
don't
to say
run
nothing.
away when they see a car.
Okay.
So this book, which is now sadly out of print, is the culmination of years and years of research. On the right is Talani Khrelin's PhD thesis that she started in 1993. She's been studying the horses for a very long time, knows a lot about them. The other contributor is a hobby historian, Manfred Goldbeck. A lot of people know him, Manny Goldbeck from Gondwana. And the book hopefully will be in print again soon. But it's a very informative, it's sort of the informative book about the wild horses, their history and origins and the scientific study around them.
Helen, if the book becomes available again, will you guys share it on your social media pages? And can we have an
Yes, we
opportunity
will.
to
Definitely
purchase
we
it?
will. Yeah.
Okay,
We
so
are
you guys will
definitely
keep us
hoping for a
posted.
new edition.
Okay, fantastic.
So this is a comparative, it's a page out of the book where Talani compared features of Kreplin's horses with the current wild horses. So the color photographs are the actual wild horses, and the features which she identified are from Kreplin's stud. So one of the big things is the lacing, which is this bottom right image, so the two circles. That is a feature which is very recognizable even today on the wild horses. It's a curious. Christina, just mention what the lacing is all about.
It's not injuries or something, because people always very often ask if it's scars on the horse's back, because it looks like a white webbing, or like grandma's little vehicle thingy, and it gets more the older the horses get, and it's in certain breeding groups quite dominant, and the older the horse gets, the more the lacing becomes, which is quite curious. And that certain horse breeds who had it in there, that
Okay. We
it's
think
also
that's a bit of connection.
a way maybe to
Okay.
go back at some stage where the foundation of the horses. Can you hear me? Okay.
can hear
Yeah,
you
you're
now.
back again.
Yeah.
So the types of breeds that Talani did, and Talani and Manny managed to discover about that are incorporated in the wild horses are the Trakehner from Poland, the Hackney, which came via the Cape mostly and also from England, and Shagaya Arabians, which came from all over. So those have been specifically identified as contributing to the wild horses. So the foundation, established in 2012, these are a sort of summary of the aims of the foundation. The big thing is research and monitoring, and they do that in order to be able to assist the ministry in decisions about land management. Obviously, a big function of the foundation is to get funds for particularly the feeding program. And a big part of our work also is to raise awareness for the realities of being wild. And this is something which is difficult because it's very emotive. And the thing about being wild is that the weather cycles go from good rain years to bad rain years. Sometimes there's many as 286 horses, which is possibly beyond the carrying capacity of the land, but it does in drought years go down to a mere 60 horses. And this is a reality of being wild, and people often don't accept this or don't want to understand that this is what happens to wild animals.
And we've had a serious drought for the last few years, isn't it?
Yes, we're coming to that.
Okay.
So the funding goes to the ongoing research. There's, you see the bottom left, that's a camera trap at one of the water holes. So that requires obviously buying cameras and buying batteries. It's a good way of monitoring the horses. Talani sometimes actually sees horses in these photographs, which she hasn't been able to see in the population, and thought perhaps that they had died somewhere, and then suddenly sees them on a photograph. So it's very helpful in monitoring the population. The middle photograph was funding was given to the hyena research people so that they could collar and track some of the hyenas. There's a lovely picture down at the bottom of Talani looking off into the distance with her binocs. So a reality, of course, is the drought. And unfortunately, humans. That the road between Aus and Ludritz runs right through the wild horses area. And as you can see, they graze right next to the road. The runoff of rain from the road makes the grazing on the side of the road obviously quite good. And in fact, one of the groups is currently grazing right next to the road where the manganese trucks go thundering by. And so one of the things the foundation does is create awareness that please do not feed the horses, because as Christina mentioned, they do approach you, and to drive carefully because they will stand and sleep in the road. They are social animals and they enjoy interactions with humans, and they will put their head right inside your car. And as a result, people begin feeding them and feed them inappropriate food, and it's always very dangerous for the horses, unfortunately. And then the realities of predation. This caused a lot of controversy and a lot of high emotions. There were some articles in the press about the hyena predation. Hyenas occur in this area naturally. So we could not exclude them as a resident here. But for 6 years, no foal survived. And that became a really emotive and huge problem for the foundation, because without the foal surviving, there was no possibility of the population surviving. Another threat to the survival of the herd, unfortunately, is the stallions, which boys will be boys, and they race around and do all these beautiful prancing, but unfortunately sometimes the mares and foals get caught in their games and get injured, and injury in the wild is often a fatal thing. The foals get knocked over. Christina, you were feeding the horses not so long ago. Did they nearly knock you down as well?
Yeah, you have to be quite careful because when the horses were really hungry and we had very nice grass that they really liked, I mean, that's especially when you put out the first bales, they really come running. They don't really care if you stand there or not, or if there are little foals in the way, which is always a disadvantage in the whole feeding process that we see. We really try to distribute the grass over a very big area so that the little horse groups, the families, also don't have to stand too close together. But still, there's always the aspect of aggression and yeah, just clustering and groups, and then a lot of tension arises, and especially with the foals, because the stallions don't really look then where the foals are. So very often they got knocked over and got injured, and it's kind of we see that as a very disadvantage of a feeding scheme, but sometimes you just have to. Yeah, and then just in general, when it's the time when the stallions start fighting again, when the hormones kick in, there is a lot of commotion, and especially then when you are in a situation where the horses are amassed in an area where you feed, it's not particularly great. Under normal circumstances, if there's enough grass, they spread over a wide area, and then it's not such a big problem. That's one of our reasons why we want to keep the whole thing and the whole process and everything we do as natural and uninterfering as possible, just to avoid these conflicts. And also sometimes stallions make weird decisions or good decisions. In the last drought or the last feeding scheme, and then we had some rain in between, and then we had to start feeding again. We had a very clever stallion who managed to get his 9 mares through the whole drought, through the whole feeding, was staying in a good spot, not walking too much for them, not to exhaust them. But now the same stallion with still a few mares that he has left, now is grazing along the road for the last 3 weeks, and 1 mare was already lost due to a car accident. So the decision of the stallion is always very important, but it's maybe not always the best. So that's why we mention it, the bad parenting aspect sometimes, especially with human interference and roads and everything. It can be of disadvantage.
Okay. Christine, you mentioned that the feed that you got was so good that the horses went crazy for it. So where do you get these feed from? Is it from Namibia, from Windhoek, or is it from South Africa? Where do you get it from?
Since we are depending on donations, it's not always our choice, but what we try is to source as much as we can in Namibia, because it's also cheaper with transport. But especially during that heavy time of drought, when the whole of Namibia was really drought stricken, we had to get from South Africa because we couldn't get good enough hay in Namibia.
Okay.
Plus the horses, okay, this is a lot of detail. I just keep this short, but just to mention it, the horses are not eating everything you give to them. So especially since they are so well adapted to certain grasses that are growing in the area, and the desert grasses are very, very good, very good nutritional value. They don't just eat everything you put down there. So we had to really source and test and decide what we're going to get them. So that makes the whole thing of feeding the horses also very expensive, because we have to look for specific grasses.
Okay, I've got a question here from Jenny from Cape Town. She says, do you intervene when there are injuries? Sorry, let me just go back to the chat. Do you intervene when there are injuries? Do you bring in vets for assistance, or do you leave them to their own devices because they are wild?
Hi, Jenny. We usually do not intervene, because that is also the aspect that Helen mentioned earlier, that you want to keep them free, you want to keep them wild, and part of that is not interfering. We don't interfere with oryx in the park, we don't interfere with the horses in the park. It's just when a horse got injured in a car accident, which happened 2 years ago, we called in the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, and we put that horse down with a broken leg. But otherwise, leg injuries, wither injuries, or anything, we really don't interfere. Also, when the stallions get old and they don't have a group anymore, they usually leave the group and then they spend the rest of their lives alone, which usually isn't very long after that. And if they decline, they decline. That's just the natural way of things, then also providing food for the vultures and the jackals and the hyenas in the area. So we do not really want to interfere there. Very often that is a difficult or touchy issue, because it's never nice to see an animal suffering. But very often we think, and it might be controversial, but we think that what we see as suffering very often isn't so bad, especially when it comes to leg injuries. Very often it just sorts itself out if you just give it time.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, as Jenny says, it's must be heartbreaking to watch, but what can you do? Do not want to interfere.
So this is the feeding program. As you can see, it costs up to 100,000 a month to feed these horses, which is the foundation has to find somewhere. We sometimes get it in bales, bottom right image. So an interlink would carry 800 bales, which Christina and her volunteers has to unload off the truck. Much more difficult is trying to unload these round bales. Somebody made this trailer for the foundation so that we can fit. Goodness, you've got 8 on there, Christina. Wow.
Yeah. Getting those bales on and off.
And then you've got to beg somebody to lend you a forklift, and it's yes, it's quite a thing. And then Christina has to drive this out all the way down to Gurup and the whole way around. I mean, a round trip of what, Christina?
I think it's 25 kilometers the round trip.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Quite
Yes,
something, yes.
That is quite something, yes.
So at the moment, if we can get hold of the grass called Erygrostis teff, that's one of their favorites, which is possibly this one in the top right.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, one of our guests that's on the show, which is so nice about the show, you know, that we are discussing this, is Andre Becker from Cape Town, which is in the Western Cape, and I know that she farms with teff. So I don't know. So who knows? Maybe we can put you in touch, you know. So this is I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, it's almost as though they want to wear a label. Teff is our favorite. Send that. Yeah.
And that's why something makes it difficult with grass donations. We sometimes had to actually say, no, we cannot take your grass, because we knew the horses wouldn't eat it. And then it's not worth all the transport costs and all the effort.
Yeah. But I think this is fancy Cape Townian grass, you know, so they would definitely like it. It's like, it's a 5-star
Yes, they
meal.
would. They would. So this is another big thing that the foundation does. CNN somehow heard about the plight of the horses, and they offered to come and do a documentary, which got a lot of attention. And it happened just at the right time, because this was when we weren't getting anywhere with the problem with the predation and had lost all the foals for 6 years. And they came, among others, CNN came and did this documentary, which really got people moving. And we managed to get big things done. Christina, can you just mention some of the others who did articles on the horses at the time? Or over the years?
So we had a big documentary done. It was ORF in Austria, so it was a German program then. Those people who filmed were here for 2 months, so they really had enough time to get to know all the horses, and they did an awesome job, which raised a lot of awareness in German-speaking Europe. It was amazing. And then during the last 2 years, we also had a Turkish company here, and we had Arte here, to those who maybe know that channel, a French-German production. And so that was while we were still feeding. So they went out with us and filmed us while feeding, and we were also able to talk a lot about this emotional issue of people and horses, which always plays a role. On the one hand, it's very important for fundraising because people have a very soft spot for horses. On the other hand, it can be very controversial because of the it's hard to see a skinny horse. If it's an oryx, you may be not so touched. I might just put it out here harsh. So that is an advantage and a disadvantage. But what I liked about the last documentary is that we all were able to actually express this, or to put it out there, that emotions play a huge role in this whole thing regarding the wild horses.
Christine, did you find it bring some more tourists to your area after this documentary?
Well, I can't really measure it, but a lot of people coming here after that, especially from the German-speaking market, they said, "Hey, we saw that documentary from 2013, and it was so touching, and so, and it's so lovely for us to now finally be here and see the horses live." So it does something. It definitely does.
Fantastic. Hopefully through this show we can get some more people from the UK and Europe as well to
You're very
Namibia and fill
welcome.
your beautiful lodge.
So finally, we have the foals being born. And this is really, for us, one of the best things that was happening. Suddenly, Gurub had foals, including the first foal to survive in that 6-year period, Zora, who's now become a little bit of a celebrity. She's been photographed quite a lot. So I'll let Christina tell you about this, because finally also with all this awareness came the first official recognition of the horses as a state asset. Christina, would you explain that?
Yeah, especially during that heavy drought when we were feeding for 2.5 years, and there was a lot of hyena predation going on. So we were constantly in contact with the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, because the horses are in a national park. So it's not a private effort here. It is a state asset. The horses are actually a state asset. So that's why everything has to go in conjunction with the ministry. When it was really, really dire down there, we had also suggested if we could move the horses to another area for a while, or longer, just to let the population recover, which was, at the end of the day, it wasn't possible because of being a state asset and couldn't go into private hands or private land, and it just didn't work. And then we said, but then please think about another solution, because otherwise this population is going to be gone at some stage, and we will not be able to save the horses. And then after a lot of back and forth, it was actually officially stated that the horses have now an official status with being important national asset for tourism, and also for history, and just being part of Namibia, an official status, which wasn't the case before. So that was quite a milestone. Plus, with a new management plan for that area being introduced and officially endorsed now, it was a milestone, and we can see that as positive. It's still to be filled with a lot of actions, details, and so on, but at least the baseline is there now, and that was something we fought very hard for. And yeah, we just have to see that as a very positive step into more communication, more collaboration, and just being the horses officially recognized, because before they weren't even mentioned in the park ordinance. That's why it was so difficult for the government also to officially deal with them. They were part of the park, so that they had to be looked after, but there was no official plan behind it. So this was a very good and important step forward.
Wow, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why it's good to have people like Christina, because I've got no patience when it comes to administratie.
I can be very diplomatic if I want to.
Wow, these are stunning pictures.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of people who contribute their time and passions towards the wild horses. On the right is Gisela Manevek's. Believe it or not, those are pencil drawings. She is a fine artist of note.
Did they not auction these off recently? Am I mistaken?
Yes, we had a raffle, and we managed to raise quite a lot of money for that. Even despite the terrible times we're living through at the moment, people still contribute to a cause like this. Gisela very kindly gave us the option of 8 of her drawings for the raffle.
Really lovely.
And the nice thing is that one of the contributors won 2 of them, because they bought 200 tickets. and they
Wow.
are now re-raffling them. So, my
Wow.
goodness, you know, when you see people being as kind as this, it's very humbling. And then, of course, our favorite photographer, Tegan Kanif, she does a lot of photography for with our riding safaris as well. And she has spent a significant amount of time down at the wild horses. She publishes a lot. She's also a journalist. So she publishes a lot of articles, and she's just done one for a French magazine. And she's selling her prints from her website and from the Wild Horses Foundation website. And half the income goes towards the wild horses. And then, I mean, we just have
Helen,
so many
can I just
people.
interrupt?
Yes.
May I please interrupt? Could you please share that information about her photography and any purchases we can do, and also any links to any documentaries? If you can share it on our Facebook pages for us, please. This will be fantastic to see how we can all contribute.
Yes. So about contributing, I mean, from a simple bottle on a counter and raising more money than you would imagine, to, for instance, community yoga sessions, banks, insurance companies, trucking companies who amazingly give the transport from South Africa for free sometimes. That, I mean, that's worth about 80,000 to the foundation. And yeah, this bottom right one, Desert Mustangs, it was them that bought so many raffle tickets and are now going to re-raffle the images they won. People are just incredibly kind.
Okay, so where can we donate? So can we go onto the Facebook page? Does it have a bank details, or how can we contribute?
Yes.
Our website, NamibiaWildHorses.com, with a hyphen in between Namibia Wild and Horses. There is a button for donations.
Fantastic.
So this is Brigitte Bartsch, who's currently walking a 600-kilometer odyssey from Windhoek to Gurrup. She's doing it in 2 stages. One stage is this winter and the other to Sossusvlei, and next winter she'll do the other half. And she's on day 3 at the moment. She's 73 years old, and she's walking to Gurrup.
Yay, fantastic. Yeah. We've been following her. She's amazing, really.
She's Namibian, and she's really a tough cookie. And
wow. Are there any people who's walking with her? Because I see she invited some people.
Yes.
Say, listen, come join anytime you want. So does she have a following?
She's got a following on Facebook. She actually wanted to do the Camino de Santiago, and it's far too expensive for us Namibians to do. So she thought this was a good alternative. Wow. Walk for the wild horses. So she's enjoying it as a solitary walk. She's a very
she's going to chat to us soon, isn't she, after the walk, obviously, in one of the shows? Am I correct in saying so? Or is that a secret? Wow, that is amazing. Look at the picture at the bottom left. If you can hardly see her, like she's like so tiny. Wow, amazing. Great.
Yeah, so there's the website. And one of Tegan's beautiful photographs of the wild horses.
Wow, that is really, really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's given us in-depth knowledge. It also makes it easier to use this as a selling tool when we sell it to our guests who comes to Namibia. Helen, quick question. Your Namibia horse safari company, do you do tours on horseback to this area, to the wild?
We do. We don't go too close to the horses, of course.
Okay.
There's stallions amongst them, which would not be a good idea. But we do we ride from Volverdans, which is
Okay.
just a little bit north, and we actually end exactly where Christina is on Kleinhaus Vista. They've got a lovely camping area in one of their schluchts there. This is a fabulous ride because this is possibly the most beautiful part of the Namib Desert. It's riding over that Namib Reserve and
Can just
over the
imagine.
Dune Sea, and this is really lovely. And then we're always lucky to have Talani Helen with us, and she does a small talk on the horses down at Gurrup, which is always
Wow.
a highlight of the trip.
Fantastic. So you must please share your upcoming trips and the dates and information. And then I believe that you're also going to do a little bit of training to tour operators coming soon who are not riders, but to teach us how to sell the horse riding safari trip. So we look forward to that. And thank you for the amazing work that you do. And we can't wait to hear more about all your trips that you're offering and about the wild horses. And Christine, thank you for the great work that you do. We are really proud to say this is Namibian, you know. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
Uh,
you too.
yeah. So
I just want to say we are currently not feeding because we were very lucky this year that we received a bit of rain in April and then again in June and then again in July. So for now the horses are fine because we are only really do drought feeding when it's utterly necessary.
okay.
Because I said it costs a lot of money. It is a lot of interruption also. So we are very happy if we don't have to feed. But what we are keeping on doing is getting funds together for the time again when we have to start feeding again. So in the moment the horses are okay, and it's also amazing that when they are on the normal desert grasses down there, they are much healthier than on our hay that we feed in
Yeah.
drought times, and the stress factor and worms and everything. So there are a lot of issues attached to when you start interfering with outside feeding. So, but yeah, as said, we are very happy if we don't have to feed because the horses are also happier and healthier, and it's better for the whole herd. But if we have to do, we are of course dependent on donations, and it's, as Helen already said, it's humbling and heartwarming how many people are helping us, who are helping us every month. Some of them anonymous. We just have maybe initials and a name, but no real contact. So thank you for everybody and this constant support, and especially also now in times where a lot of people maybe lost their work or are on reduced pay, like we all are. People, yeah, it's heartwarming. It's amazing what these horses mean to a lot of people, and we hope we can keep them alive for the next generations, that we can just keep them going down here.
I'm sure we will if we've got so many support. You know, always said to everybody, you know, I've recently been traveling to America, and I said, listen, if you think the Americans are patriotic, you must see the Namibians. So let me tell you, we're very proud, and we'll do our best. And then Monica also just said, thank you very much. It's an eye opener, and we will contribute wherever we can. Keep up the fantastic work. So thank you very, very much, all of you. All right, you
Thank
take
you.
care, and we will see you guys on Monday with Ingrid Klimke. So we'll put it
Yes.
out on our social media pages, and we hope to see you there. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much for your time, Christine, Helen,
Thank you,
Andrew,
Michelle.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Michelle.
Jenny. Take care. Thanks, guys.